On, guys, it's Luke here from Simbox, and we're back with the Let's Talk Boxing podcast. I'm joined with my co-host from JTH Boxing, Josh Hart, and it's a cracking fight week. You know, this podcast has been on a bit of a hiatus, and there's been so much going on in the world of boxing, and what a better time to jump back in. An all-British heavyweight grudge match with Frazer Clarke challenging Fabio Wardley with the British and Commonwealth heavyweight titles on the line. There's nothing like two heavyweights slugging it out. There's a cracking undercard, and we're here for it all. As I say, I'm joined by Josh. He's boxed himself this weekend, so I'm sure he'll tell us all about that. Just before we get into the podcast, I'd like to ask our listeners and our viewers to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave us a little comment. It all helps as we look to grow and expand. And of course, head over to JTH Boxing and do the same over there. Josh, I believe you're very sore, but you're here on the Boxing Podcast, and we're excited for this weekend. How are you, man?
I think you hit the nail on the head there saying I'm very sore, but on the whole, I'm very good. High spirits, despite the fact I might have not got the win. A very controversial draw, but a great experience. I loved every second of it. Just the only part I did not love was having to sit around for 9 hours. Make sure I had plenty of food though, but sitting around from 3 o'clock until 10 to midnight waiting to ring walk. And then they didn't even play the ring walk song I wanted. I gave him a USB stick, had my ring walk song, and then I went to ring walk and I had it in my house. Like, my song's about to start playing, and then the song didn't start playing. I was just confused. But on the whole, very good, very excited for this week as well, especially after 2 weeks of brilliant UK cards, which I feel like we've lacked this year. Hopefully we get another great card again this weekend. But very good, very sore, but very excited as well.
Absolutely. Now, Josh, one thing I've got to ask is, it was scored a controversial draw for the viewers, the listeners that don't know. Josh took part in an ultimate white collar boxing event this past Saturday. The fight was scored a draw over 3 rounds. The fight is available to view over on JTH Boxing on YouTube, so check it out. Let us know how you score the fight, your thoughts on it. Will you be lodging an appeal with the British Boxing Board of Control, Josh? Are they the overriding governing body? Are we going to force and demand a rematch?
Rematch. Do you know what? I do have contact with my opponent because I got along with him really well in training, and we didn't think we were going to be fighting each other. So I had him on Snapchat. I actually texted him Sunday morning saying thank you for a great fight. But I might lodge another little text to him saying how about we both sign up for the next one and run it back. Because I'm sure his boys think he won, but my boys, my family who were all there as well, they all said I won. I actually watched it back within about 2 hours of getting home. Um, don't see how I drew. Um, then again, there were points where he did absolutely have me rocked to the core. There were points where I don't look fully rocked, but there are points where I'm just knackered. I just drop my hands. I'm just letting him hit me. I was just letting him hit me at some point. But I don't think I'll push for the rematch just yet. I got a very busy period coming up with something that hopefully I'll be allowed to talk about soon. But obviously I'm coming to the end of my time at college as well, so I'm working on a big project there as well. A project that I could probably get quite a few people within the boxing community involved in. You'll be good to hear. Um, you'll be glad to hear that my head's gone. I'm telling you now, I got hit too many times on Saturday, I promise you. Um, but yeah, no, we're not going to demand a rematch just yet. I'm not going to appeal it. I've took my victory in the fact of how many people messaged me saying that was a clear winner and it was not my opponent. But I'm just going to take a nice little rest now. I think I do need it as well. I didn't expect those 8 weeks to be as tough as what they were, especially with me turning 18 in the process as well, not being able to fully celebrate yet. Well, I have, that's a lie. Um, but I just want a nice little rest for a little bit because I pushed myself very hard on Saturday to the point where I was throwing up in my dressing room. So I think that says it all there.
Of course, Josh. Now we are in a very privileged position with our platforms. They give us access to interview fighters, to attend shows, and to see fighters immediately after fights, immediately before fights, and get the lowdown on the ins and outs of camp. And yeah, we see them bare the souls and get a little insight that maybe you don't get just watching the interviews on YouTube or watching fights on your TV. Now, obviously, there's levels to this, but given that you've trained for this fight and you've got in there, you've boxed 3 rounds, it was scored a draw. Does it give you even more respect? I know you're very respectful already of these fighters that we again are very lucky to interact with on a daily basis. But does it give you a deeper respect, a deeper understanding of the commitment and everything that goes behind being a professional boxer?
100%. I'm no professional, and I was boxing no one close to a professional. That's not disrespect to my opponent. He'll openly say neither me or him are close to professional standards. But no, the respect, obviously, like you said, the respect was already there. But now that I've been in there and I've done it, I understand what they mean when a fighter says there's no feeling like being in the ring, there's no buzz like it. I was always like, I want to feel it. And being in there on Saturday, I ring walked first, so I was then stood there. And you know, when you're stood there in the ring, the refs check my gloves and everything. Like I've been given the all clear to go, and it's kind of like, oh shit, this is real now. I've got all my boys in the crowd who were chanting all night long for me. Even afterwards, I got shown videos. They were in the car park waiting for the Ubers home. They were still singing their hearts out for me. They were singing for me like I just won a world title, and it was just a 3 round fight that I was doing for charity. But no, when you talk about the respect that's there, like. I don't know. I put it on Twitter the next morning. I don't know how they do it. Like, especially journeymen who will box 4 rounds or 6 rounds, go home and do it again. And it's the fact that it's not just like I did this in my local city. Okay, while I wasn't in the city centre, it was like a half an hour drive. You'll have journeymen traveling all over the country week in, week out. However, those journeymen that probably don't get gifted one of these incredible trophies that I've now got. It's not really a winners or losers trophy because everybody got one. But not many people sign up to do ultra white collar boxing. Um, and it was all for a good cause as well. I think that's what the good part was. There was no bad blood going into any type of fights, which obviously you don't expect. But it's always nice to see when there's people like the two lads who were fighting before me. They were actually helping each other wrap their hands because one of them didn't know how to do it. So they were fighting in about half an hour, and you've got his opponent wrapping his hands for him. Obviously, don't get me wrong. At least he then knows that there's nothing in those hand wraps. But it's like that. Me and my opponent, we were sat there having a nice little chat beforehand. And we all signed up for the right reasons. We all signed up with one, the intentions of being healthier. Some of us obviously are big boxing fans anyway, like myself. So we all wanted to kind of understand what it's really like being in the ring. Ultimately, it was also all for charity. We all got to pick money, not pick money. We got to pick charities of our own choices, and we all got to raise a certain amount of money for them. I picked young people's mental health, and I think in the end I raised £350 for charity, which is a great number, especially for just a young 18-year-old lad. I'm no special like celebrity or anything. I've just sent it out to my friends, my family, put it up on Twitter to see who's going to donate from there. And in the end, it was just a really good experience. If you've got the time and you want to push yourself and make a change, I'd say there's no further place to look than white collar boxing, especially if you go through ultra white collar boxing. They do loads of other ones. They actually do an MMA one, which my mates are trying to talk me into, but I struggle with boxing. I don't really want to throw a right hand and then next thing you know, I've got someone lifting me up in the air and slamming me onto my back. And next thing you know, I'm being choked out in front of my family. Getting punched was bad enough. Getting choked out's another thing. So I'm going to stay clear of the MMA. But the boxing, it's great. Everyone gets along well. The training is super professional. And it overall is just a really, really good experience. I genuinely could not sell it any better. I've not even got the funny words to actually describe how good it all was, the way it was ran, the matchups as well. Do you know what? It takes a lot. It's probably very stressful for them to match people up because they had to match about 31 fights for my card, and there was 3 or 4 people watching us, and they have to watch us over the entire 8 weeks, watch us all spar. Bear in mind, we only do about 3 or 4 sparring sessions, um, and they have to match up 60 odd people in 2 weeks, and they did it perfectly. There was not one mismatch on there. Um, I think they did it even better than what we thought because we were thinking we were going to be fighting someone that we sparred regularly with. The guy I fought, I think I did 3 or 4 rounds of sparring with at the max, and like me and him were completely shocked that we got each other. But when you actually look at it, we were both the same weight, same height, both fought the exact same. I know I'm going to say this now, and you'll watch my fight and you think I'm lying, but I tend to just love just to jab and move. When you watch the fight, I completely forget to do that. But trust me, the jab and move is probably what I like to do most. Um, and like the matchups were completely even. There was no bad matchups on there. The fight's actually delivered, and everyone comes out and supports their family, their friends. And yeah, just it's really really good. I'm gonna stop talking about it now because I'm rambling on now and saying the same things, but would recommend it to anyone who's looking to make a change.
Absolutely. As I say, check the fight out over on JTH Boxing on YouTube and leave a comment of how you'd score the fight. It'd be interesting to see our listeners, our viewers' reaction to the fight. Moving on to Saturday night, it's what we're here for, Josh. As I said in the intro, nothing better than a British grudge match, and this fight with Fabio Wardley.
You've already slipped up. It's Sunday night, not
Oh,
Saturday night.
Sunday, of
Sunday
course.
night.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, thanks for picking it up there, Josh. completely threw me that as well. I thought it when I was on Twitter looking at it as well. So yeah, so Sunday, Easter Sunday, which is a bit different. But yeah, there's nothing better than a British title grudge match. There is bad blood here between Fabio Wardley and Frazer Clarke, and I think it's got all the ingredients for a cracking main event, which we'll look at first before we get onto the undercard, because I think the undercard is brilliant as well. And in a day and age where we're seeing more of these fights going over to Saudi with the influx of the money over there, which is understandable. We can see why those fights, those shows are run in Saudi Arabia, but it's also important that we keep a fair balance of good shows here in the UK. And as you mentioned before, we've had Liam Davis and the Queensberry show recently. Ash Lane winning the British title in stunning fashion Friday just gone. So it's really important that we're keeping these shows here. Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall coming up, and this Sunday with Boxer. So yeah, Frazer Clarke, Fabio Wardley. The animosity there. The Frazer Clarke seemingly was pulled out of this fight originally by his promoter, his backing team. He of course would have took the fight. Let's not beat around the bush here. He would have took the fight with Fabio at a day's notice, I'm sure. But it's on, and Frazer Clarke with the added amateur pedigree. He's got the background there that Fabio Wardley hasn't got. You know, ironically enough, Fabio Wardley actually come up through the white collar boxing scene. 17-0, 16 knockouts, barely put a punch wrong thus far in his career. Frazer Clarke 8-0 in the pro ranks, 6 knockouts. Josh, I'm buzzing for this. I think it's a cracking fight and one that I'm really looking forward to. And you got the Gloves Are Off program from Sky Sports, which they're up there with the best at producing these kind of shows. And sometimes they're used when they're not needed to be used. But this one is one that you want to hear the thoughts. You want to see them going back and forth and poking fingers at each other, and this, that, and the other. It's what we're here for as boxing fans. You as excited as me for this?
I think I am. I think I very much am. It's a great fight. It's a fight that when it first got spoke about last year, I think that's the reason why there's so much interest in it now as well, is the fact that there was all the controversy last year. And it kind of reminds me of Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall in the rematch. In the fight should have probably happened a year ago, but you've left it and you've let it build. And now look at the size of it. It's headlining the O2 Arena. I don't think it would have headlined the O2 if it was to do it last year. It's sold over 10,000 tickets from what, according to Boxer. More tickets have just gone on sale. Um, it's just a great fight, and it's the fact. Obviously, we'll talk about the undercard later, but I just want to quickly do say as well that fair play to Boxer for putting on such a good undercard as well. Obviously, I think this is only Boxer's third show of the year, but they've put on three quality shows or two quality shows already with Tasha Jonas versus Michaela Mayer, then Boatsy Aziz. Now we've got this one. They're on a great roll at the moment. Um, Wardley versus Clarke. What first of all, again, we've got to take your hat off to Wardley. Obviously, his deal with Matchroom, or either way, when he won the title with Matchroom didn't really have an awful lot on the table for him. He had one more fight with them after winning the British title, and that wasn't even a defense of his title. Then he said, "Listen, I need to go free agent, see what's available." Fought David Adelaide on his promotion, beat him. Now he's jumping onto Boxer's side, could beat Frazer Clarke. We don't know yet, but it's the fact that he is not tying himself up with anyone, and instead, even though he is the champion, realistically, could probably tie himself up to Matchroom or anyone else and get a ridiculously good deal, probably. He's just pinging about, going to other people's promotions, and ultimately trying to beat them on their promotions. And I think if he beats Frazer Clarke this week, and I don't think there's any doubt in saying that Fabio Wardley's above British level, because there's not many other heavyweights really contending. Obviously, Adelaide was one, but he's been beat. You got Frazer Clarke, and then who else is really at that landmark of let's put them in for the British title? Because obviously you could say Moses Atauma, but again, some people are saying that's too soon. We'll talk about Moses Atauma, I'm sure, later on, especially after his performance on Friday night. You've got Solomon Dakers, but he seems to be tied up with David Adelaide. They said April 20th for that date, but then Queensberry announced their show and there was no sign of Adelaide versus Dakers taking place. Personally, don't think that's a fight that deserves to be at York Hall. I think that fight deserves to be somewhere else. Um, but it's got all the ingredients for a great fight. My head's been swaying with my prediction the whole time. I started off thinking Wardley stops him. Now I'm starting to think Frazer Clarke could get the job done, especially when you look at the pedigrees, especially how they've come up in such different ways. Wardley going through the white collar route, I could end up being the next Wardley. You never know. I've made my start now. Frazer Clarke through the Olympic route, which I don't think many of us have really even thought of attempting. Especially after last weekend, I don't think I'll be going anywhere near amateur boxing for a while. But no, when you look at the backgrounds of the two, you'd probably think on paper Frazer Clarke should be the favourite, but then when you look at the professional ranks, you have to say British boxing fans have been disappointed by Frazer Clarke so far. We've not seen, you know, we've not seen the matchups that we've wanted. Obviously, he got messed about last year, and I think that's where it really left that sour taste in the British boxing fans' mouths. That we wanted to see Frazer Clarke versus Fabio Wardley last year. We didn't get it. Frazer Clarke then went on to put on a 10-round points job against Marius Vac in a and again, I don't say it's in a disrespectful way, but in a very boring fight at York Hall. Then went on to beat Dave Allen, and again did not probably look great that night. But it could Frazer Clarke be a case of he'll look better as the opposition gets better? Because sometimes when you've got someone who's just coming to coming to survive, covering up, not engaging, which ultimately Dave Allen and Marius Vac did. You're not going to be able to make yourself look as good as possible. Whereas when you've got someone like Fabio Wardley, who's a live opponent and he's going to be coming for your head, that's where we could see the best version or the worst version of Frazer Clarke this weekend. And you can say the same about Fabio Wardley as well. We could see the best version of him or we could see the worst version of him. And I think that's what's got me so excited is I don't think either of these men have Fabio's had those tests and he's passed them with flying colours, but I think this is a real make or break fight for Frazer Clarke, especially with while he's young in his professional career, he's not a young man. I think this is a fight that really does have a lot. Obviously, we always have the phrase of, Frank Warren's been pushing that term a lot of, you can come back from these defeats, but in the heavyweight division and where Frazer Clarke wants to go, can he come back if he loses this weekend? I'm not sure. But I think that's where the real excitement is with this card, and that's why I'm just absolutely buzzing for it. And I will be sitting down on Easter Sunday and watching it from top to bottom or from bottom to top. First fight to the last. It's gonna be a great night of boxing.
Absolutely. I think, you touched on it there with Frazer Clarke. You kind of look like nobody wants to take a loss, of course not, it goes without saying. But if you to look at who would suffer more from a loss, you look at Frazer Clarke at 32 years of age. He was in the Olympic cycle for so long, and then, he was behind Joe Joyce, he was behind Anthony Joshua. He finally did get his opportunity. I think he medaled. Did he get a bronze?
Yeah, he got a bronze medal. I
Yeah,
think he only lost because of a cut as well. I think he
yeah.
would have probably went on, but still
And
got
then
a medal, which
Yeah, and then when he did finally turn pro, I think the worry was, did he stagnate? Did he stay in the amateur scene too long, and that he wasn't going to have the time to transition into the pro game? And as you say, it's been a bit stop start. He's obviously got all the wins, and he's stopped 6 of his 8 opponents. But if you look at Fabio Wardley, I remember back in 2020 in the bubble, in the matchroom back garden, and he fought Simon Vallily. This is 4 years ago when Simon Vallily came in with all the amateur pedigree. And don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing Simon Vallily to Frazer Clarke in any way, shape, or form. But my point being is that Fabio Wardley stepped up the levels, and going back to 2020, it was like, okay, this is a white collar boxer coming in against somebody that is of an amateur pedigree. I think Simon Vallily had fought at the Commonwealth Games, and Fabio stopped him. Then he stepped up and he fought Eric Molina, who wasn't at his best. Probably would have beat him at his best, to be fair. But former world title challenger, give Wilder problems for a little while. He stopped him, and then he's gone on that run of beating like Nathan Gorman, which is a good win, and then beating David Adelaide. So I think the both have got a lot to prove in terms of if they're going. It's almost like untapped potential at the minute. Frazer Clarke has got all that amateur pedigree there, and can he transition that on the biggest fight? Like you say, Fabio Wardley is by far and away his most dangerous opponent to date. Is that going to bring the best out of him? We'd like to hope so. And Fabio Wardley gets better with each passing fight. So it really does make for a great fight. I think the early rounds are going to be really interesting. Is Frazer Clarke going to try and take it into deep waters, try and take it the distance? We know Fabio Wardley has got the power to hurt anybody early. So is he going to come out all guns blazing? It, as you say, lines up for a real fight of intriguement. We're all going to be sat there with plenty of chocolate around, I'm sure, plenty of Easter eggs, and looking for an Easter cracker in the heavyweight division. As always, guys, let us know your predictions in the comments below. I will be dropping a prediction video for that on YouTube, and just like Josh says, like I'm still on the fence, and I think that's why I've not posted a prediction clip just yet. So I'm going to try and figure out which side of the fence I'm sat on with that.
Are
I
we
do
going
want
to
to
make
move.
predictions today, or are we not going to make any predictions just yet? Or
I'm going
I
to
think it's
save it. I'm
tradition on
going
the
to save it.
podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to save. I'm going to try and get it on a prediction video that will be available on the YouTube channel, of course. But moving through again, what we've already said is a brilliant card. Another heavyweight fight that I want to get into. We'll try and go through from bottom to top now in terms of how we think these will be on TV. Alan Babic moving back up to heavyweight. He was unsuccessful last time out in a challenge with Ryazanski out in
Yeah, Lucas
Poland.
Rosansky, because he's now fighting a Coley, isn't he,
Yeah,
in Poland?
that's a
Oh.
really interesting fight. And, not to go off on a tangent, but before we get on to Babic, seeing as though you mentioned Akola Ryazanski, which is an intriguing fight, Lawrence Akola linking up with Joe Gallagher.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've not been able to do too much looking into it.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting link up, definitely. I think Okoli's had enough time away from boxing now, and probably thought Sugar Hill probably wasn't the best trainer for him. Obviously, there's a lot of disrespect in my opinion on Okoli's name at the moment. Whenever you mention Okoli, I said to one of my boys the other day, I was like, "Oh, Okoli's fighting against you. I might watch it." He was like, "Try not to fall asleep watching it." And I was like, I know Okoli's not been on the best run of form recently, but there was a time where he was lighting up crowds. I remember he was the chief support for AJ against Usyk at Tottenham and stopped his guy inside about 3 rounds. Um, and that's it. Like Okoli, I'm glad to see him back. I think a big interesting topic about the fight as well, not to go away from the fact of his training partner, but people saying, can you really classify him as a two-time two-weight world champion if he beats Rosansky? Because not all four governing bodies accept Bridgerweight as a division, or the 225-pound division is what some people are going to be labeling it. I think that's an interesting point. Could we classify Cody as a two-weight world champion if he is to beat Rosansky?
I suppose it falls into the same category as the IBO, isn't it? An IBO world champion considered a world champion when it's not one of the four main titles? So I guess it's personal preference, but to play devil's advocate there, Josh Whittaker, I'm erring on the side of your friend there that mentioned, oh, O'Coley's fighting, try not to fall asleep, because the frustrating thing with Lawrence is, of course, he's got that Olympic background and he's a huge man and he's got all the attributes to be spectacular. And for so long, he was known for tying opponents up and negating their attacks. And then he had that little run of form with Shane McGuigan, I think it was, that was in his corner. And you thought, oh, here we go. This is the Coley. This is the guy that we've all been told is the big hitter, knocks people out. He'd be moving up to heavyweight. He was calling out Dillian White for a while. And then he kind of went in with Chris Smith, and when the going got tough, he reverted to type and he started tying Smith up. It started getting ugly, and ultimately he was dropped a few times. I think was he deducted points for holding as well, and it all kind of unravelled. And that's when you seen like Okolie fall apart in the ring when he lost his world title. And I think he's got a lot to prove in that fight. But I'm sure we'll discuss that in further depth as and when that fight takes place. Moving back to Sunday night, Alan Babic looking to get back to winning ways against Steve Robinson. Steve's a good guy. I like Steve Robinson. He's a good guy. He's a good character. Does exactly what it says on the tin. He's either going to knock somebody out or be knocked out. And for Babic, I think he goes in rightfully as a favourite, with all due respect to Big Steve Robinson. But you got to say his career's on the line here. If he gets stopped at Bridgerweight in a round, if he comes back and takes a loss against Steve Robinson in a fight he's expected to win, questions are going to be asked because he's very entertaining. He's got somewhat of a cult following. But how long does that last if he takes another defeat against Steve Robinson on Saturday? But another fight that could produce fireworks, and I'm sure will be very entertaining one way or another.
I'm very excited to see the comeback of Alan Babic. I think when he was fighting regularly under the Matchroom banner, I have to say he was one of my favourite fighters. He was guaranteed, if you saw Babic on a card, you knew you were going to be entertained, whether it was for 1 round or 10 rounds when he finally got taken the distance. He was an incredible, incredible fighter. Okay, while he might not be the most technically gifted and he might not be the biggest man, he would come in there and look for a war every single time. And I'm excited to see him back. I think Steve Robinson is a matchup that kind of took me by surprise, especially when I know he's back at heavyweight, but he also fought some guys probably a bit better than Steve Robinson, especially coming off a world title challenge. Okay, while it's Bridgerweight in a very lackluster division, a division that does not hold a lot of names, there's not much to be done there. Coming off a world title challenge, it seems to be stepping a bit far down, but it's a fun fight. Steve Robinson's been in great fights so far in his professional career. Um, it's a fun fight. It's a fight that I like. I'm not against the fight. Um, but yeah, no, I fully agree with Babic's career being on the line this weekend. I feel he needs to win, and I don't feel like he just needs to win. I feel like he probably needs to stop him, which feels a bit mad to be saying about a 11-1 fighter that their career is already on the line. Is it 11-1 his record? I want
Yeah,
to say it's 11-1. Yeah.
yeah,
What can I say? Got hit in the head on Saturday, but I still remember me records, people. Um, but no, it's definitely an interesting fight. It'll be interesting to see how Babic is where he's at now in his career as well, especially after what about when was it he fought Rosansky? Was it last April? It was about almost a year ago now. Almost about about 11 months ago. So he's had that time out of the ring, back at heavyweight. It'll be interesting to see one, how the losses affected him, but two, also being back at heavyweight because he tried that same approach against Rosansky that he's had his entire career in what was an absolute firefight for the round or 2 rounds that it lasted. I think it was only a round he lasted against Rosansky. Um, but it'll be interesting to see if he's still got that style of wanting to take a war to someone, or do you reckon that loss could have had a massive effect on his head, and that's why he took a massive step back for a while. But it would be really interesting to see how he comes out. It's a fight I'm very excited for. I think it's a fight that a lot of people have probably forgot about that's happening this weekend as well. But I'm very excited to see the return of Alan Babic, definitely.
absolutely. And I think it's scheduled for 10. I think it's safe to say I don't even think that fight makes it past 5 rounds either way. Moving down the card, Vidal Riley against Mikael Lawal. The cruiserweight division quickly becoming one of the most entertaining divisions, both domestically and on the world team, with fighters like Jai Opetaia, Myers Bradis. And now you got Vidal Riley and Mikael Lawal. I think is it for the English title? Is it the British title?
So what, this weekend?
Yeah. Is
I think it's just a 10 rounder.
is it
I
just
don't
a
think
seven
there's any
round?
title. I don't know if there's not been any mention of the title being on the line for the English title, but it makes sense to probably put it on the line, I guess, if it's a 10 round fight cruiserweight.
Yeah, you could be right. You could be right. I know he won the English title in his last fight, and there's no mention of that being on the line. But I think this is a good fight for both guys to take. You've got Isaac Chamberlain is British champion. Oh yeah, of course, Isaac Chamberlain's the British champion, and he's been
Mm.
mandated to fight Chef Clark. Of course, yes. Of course, this isn't a British title. Maybe the English title will be on the line, but as I say, with it being such a stacked division, that this is going to put one of the two men in good standing to fight maybe the winner of Isaac Chamberlain and Chef Clark. Chef Clark, one of my favorite fighters as well. I think he's brilliant to watch. Um, I think this is an interesting fight because it could almost be like a crossroads fight, especially for Mikael Wall. I think he's the guy that needs the win to propel him back into the mix, and I think Vidal Riley's the guy on the rise, and I think again he's got untapped potential, and he's certainly a guy on the up.
It's definitely an interesting fight. A matchup that again probably kind of caught a few people by surprise. Especially when you look at Vidal. Obviously, I'm sure Bucks were probably going to look for an English title defense, and then they've just gone, "Oh, do you know what, Vidal? Mikael Lawal, 10 rounds." Vidal's going to say yes to that. And I think, do you know what? I'm glad to see Vidal doing well in his pro career, especially from when I got into boxing. If you mentioned Vidal Riley, shoot me for saying this, but I probably knew him better as KSI's coach than actually a fighter at first. Um, but now that he's fully settled down into his pro career, you can see that he's a legit professional. I'm sure there was probably, again, I'm sure there's a lot of question marks around him when he first signed with Sky. Probably a lot of people saying, "Oh, he's just one of those YouTube boxers again." But look at him; he's took the sport seriously. He's not interested in fighting Jake Paul, Tommy Fury, any of these guys who take the sport seriously to an extent. But Vidal's a true professional. Same goes for Mikael Lawal. Again, both true professionals to the sport. Um, and it's a really interesting fight because I feel like Mikael Lawal needs to win this fight. Otherwise, it's a very long road back for him. Um, and as for Vidal, if Vidal wants to get this fight with Isaac Chamberlain that he's been chasing, I know Isaac's probably all tied up now with Chev Clark. But if Vidal wants to keep chasing this British title goal, he needs to win this weekend. You can't not keep saying you want this fight and then not beat a former British champion, especially the man that Isaac's just beat. He's done the perfect thing there, saying if I can't fight Isaac, I want the next best thing, which is the one that he's just beat. Um, so it's a really exciting fight. I'm leaning towards Vidal Riley on points, but we know that Lowell also has that power to put your lights out. So I feel like Vidal will be will be very aware of that. But I think Vidal Riley on points is going to be my lock.
Yeah, I think that's one that we can agree on. I think Vidal Riley will win this on points, and Lawal, like I say, even though he's only got that one loss last time out to Isaac Chamberlain, I think this is a fight where he could even in defeat if he puts on a big performance, he still certainly fights there for him in a busy and stacked domestic cruiserweight division. Josh, I want to try and squeeze this all into one episode, so I'm going to give us 60 seconds to look at Florian Marku against Chris Congo. It'd be wrong not to mention Callum Simpson and I think Ben Whitaker. Is Ben Whitaker on the card as well?
Ben Whitaker's
Yeah,
on the card.
yeah. So
Yes, he's
two of the
fighting for
most
second area
exciting,
champion.
yeah, two of the most exciting fighters in the country. Really, really top-rated prospects for me, and Callum Simpson and Ben Whitaker. So we certainly look forward to those two fights in separate fights, of course. But that could be a meeting down the road. Who knows if Callum Simpson wanted to move up to light heavyweight? Ben Whitaker, we know what he brings. Very entertaining fighter. You either love him or hate him. But yeah, I want to focus on, just to close out the podcast, Florian Marku against Chris Congo, welterweight clash. And just like every other fight, really, that we've mentioned, could be considered a 50-50, great clash of styles. I think the one thing that frustrates me, Florian Marku, is that he's, of course, Albanian, because I think if he was in that British title mix, he'd certainly be a contender for winning that title. He looked great against Dylan Moran last time out. Um, but a good fight against Chris Congo, a true pro Chris Congo. He's took his losses, he's come back, and I'm sure he'll be confident in getting the job done against Florian Marku, who, of course, will also be equally as confident. But yeah, 60 seconds, Josh. Tell us about the fight.
I'm gonna go straight in. I'm gonna say I think Florian Marku stops Chris Congo. When I've made my trips to Steel City, I've had the absolute pleasure of watching Florian spar, and he's been sparring guys that are nowhere near or a couple weight classes above him. Um, and just his style, I think he's got one of those styles that is so infuriating to deal with when you're facing that style. He likes to sit on your chest, he likes to work your body, and ultimately he'll break you down. He essentially just drowns you. But it's a great fight. Chris Congo, there's a lot riding for him in this fight. Coming off this loss to Equestrian, it's his first fight in a year and a half. He really needs this win to essentially again keep his career afloat essentially. Because if he loses this weekend, that's two losses in a row. Where do you really go from there? Because he's proven that he's at a good level by making it this far. But does he really want to go away and rebuild when he's already had to make it this far to get here? But I'm locking in Florian Marku, stops him. I'm gonna say late on. I'm not gonna go exact rounds, but I'm gonna say Florian Marku with a late stoppage.
Yeah, I think Florian Marku, Chris Congo. I think this is all about how Chris Congo wants to approach the fight, and if he gets involved early, because we know what Florian Marku is bringing to the table. You know, he's going to be hands up high, walking his opponent down. If Chris Congo tries to stand and trade with him, he could get took out early. If he doesn't, if he boxes and moves, I think he'll take it a few rounds. But ultimately, I think Marku will get to him. Another entertaining fight. But Josh, we've reached the end of the podcast. It's good to be back. The Let's Talk Boxing podcast will be more frequent. There's plenty of boxing to get stuck into in the coming weeks and months. The Matchroom 5v5 with Queensbury, Fury Usyk, plenty more. Josh Taylor, Jack Cattrill. I've missed shows out, but that's just how busy and entertaining boxing is at the minute. Again, I'd just like to thank our listeners, our viewers, for checking us out. Hit that like button, the subscribe button, leave us a comment, let us know what you want to chat about. Josh, your final thoughts?
Um, Again, thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you've all enjoyed. Hope you've enjoyed our predictions and my white collar breakdown from my fight at the beginning. Go watch the fight and let me know your scores because I need to get the clarity that I won. I can't keep having my mates saying that I drew, especially when I've got them saying, "Do you want a colouring book because you're good at drawing?" Exactly. So, thank you for watching. See you all next week.